I'm Kumasi in Washington, D.C. In just a few hours, thousands of people will be here at the National Mall to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. I'm Kumasi reporting live from Washington, D.C. Tomorrow, thousands will come together here to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. And Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, for them, what it really symbolizes is progress. You know, they told me when they came up here for the original march in 1963, they weren't allowed to stay at any of the local hotels. They weren't allowed to eat at the local restaurants here because of the color of their skin. Well, Mary, Ron got to talk to lawmakers on Saturday here at the Lincoln Memorial. That was the very first march celebrating the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. But tomorrow, President Obama will be right here on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Well, Stacey, I spoke with Robbie Stokes. He grew up in Florida, went to Florida State, and after graduating from there, he took a job in D.C., but then decided to quit and start his own nonprofit. So now he sees the work that he's doing as a part of Dr. King's dream. So you can just imagine how exciting it was for him to be here today. Of course, they actually came up on Saturday because this has been going on all week, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. And for them, what it really symbolizes is progress. You know, they told me when they came up here for the original march in 1963, they weren't allowed to stay at any of the local hotels. They weren't allowed to eat at the local restaurants here because of the color of their skin. And so that's one of the things they really touch on when they talk about how far our country has come. Another big thing is just knowing that the country has a black president. They told me it's something they never expected. So hearing President Obama at the Lincoln Memorial, the same place where Dr. King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech, is something that is really special to them, something they're really looking forward to. They told me, though, the country still has a lot of work to be done, but they're happy to be here and just celebrate this historic occasion.
In 1963, I left from Florida A&M University, me and 5 of my friends, and we just went up on the Greyhound bus.
Well, last time we went up on a train the last time. We didn't spend the night.
The first time I was 15 years old, living in Washington, D.C.
They all took different paths to get to the March on Washington in 1963. But on its 50th anniversary, 4 Jacksonville residents traveled the road back to the nation's capital together. They took a bus from Jacksonville, and I caught up with them when they returned.
It was very gratifying to return after 50 years.
It was almost like I got deja vu when we walked on the grounds.
Saturday, they joined hundreds of thousands at the National Mall to march and listen to speakers, just as they'd done 50 years before. But some things had definitely changed. There were no laws preventing them from staying in local hotels and eating at local restaurants because of the color of their skin, like there were last time.
I went up on the bus. We couldn't stay, so we had to come on back. There was nowhere for us to stay. And we carried lunches, so we had to eat there.
This time they stayed and ate wherever they wished. Just one of the lasting legacies, they say, of the March on Washington, not just across the country, but in our area.
I've seen a lot of growth in Jacksonville. We've had a black sheriff, and now we have a black mayor, because most of us never thought we'd ever see a black president. So I think the city has come a long way.
50 years later, these 4 say there is much to be proud of, but still much to be done before Dr. King's dream is fulfilled.
Well, I feel good. I think about the progress we made. It's been a very fantastic game from what it was at one time. We still have a lot of work to do.
So the event starts here at the National Mall at 11 o'clock. At 3 p.m., people here in D.C. and all across the country will let freedom ring by doing different bell ringing events. The significance of that is because it was 3 o'clock p.m. On August 28th in 1963 when Dr. King delivered his address. And right after those celebrations, President Obama will stand in the same place at the Lincoln Memorial and address the crowd here gathered for the celebration. And I can tell you a lot of people are so excited about this. These celebrations have been going on all week, but people just really excited to see President Obama, President Clinton, former President Carter, and so many people just come here to the National Mall to celebrate Dr. King, his vision, in the March on Washington. Reporting live in D.C., Kumasi on Channel 4, the local station.
Thank you, Kumasi. Kumasi mentioned the bells ringing around the nation.
Well, Mary, Ron got to talk to lawmakers on Saturday here at the Lincoln Memorial. That was the very first march celebrating the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. But tomorrow, President Obama will be right here on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial delivering a speech to the crowd here, the same place where Dr. King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech 50 years ago. As you can see, people are out here putting on the finishing touches, trying to get everything ready ready for tomorrow. Things kick off here around 11 o'clock, and you have a lot of people out here just taking it all in, taking pictures, just wanting to be here, be a part of this moment in history. But for Ron Davis, he told me what he came for was about more than the anniversary.
When I went to the march, I saw people of all colors, and we all stood together shoulder to shoulder, from the blackest black to the whitest white. We all stood together.
That's how Ron Davis remembers Saturday's march to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the March in Washington. People from across the country reflecting the dream of the man they came to honor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and speaking out for the causes important to them. For Ron Davis and Lucy McBath, their message was justice for their son Jordan, who was shot and killed at a gas station after an argument over loud music.
People remember pictures more than names. When people saw that picture of Jordan with the Obey cap on, it hit home. When people saw on the back of the shirt, the new shirts have loud music on the back of the shirts and musical notes. That hit home with people. Davis used this march to share his son's story, especially with the many civil rights leaders and lawmakers in attendance. But he says many already knew it, like House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Attorney General Eric Holder. He turned around, he looked at me, and just before I could open my mouth, he said, I know who, as I was saying who I was, he said, I know who you are. Davis says the conversation was brief but powerful. In the back of my mind, I'm saying, this is the Attorney General of the United States, and he's speaking to me, and he said, your son's going to get justice. He said, I have no doubt that your son is going to get justice. Ron's older son and two grandkids joined him and Lucy as they marched. But at times, knowing Jordan would never join them again brought a sense of sadness for his mom. I said, Lucy, don't ever think that Jordan is not here. She said, well, he should be here. I said, he is here. And as I started talking to her, she came to understand that he was there, that people had gravitated toward her and toward me because Jordan's spirit, the people that have never seen Jordan, sit there and cry for him. And despite the circumstances of his son's death, Davis says he still believes in Dr. King's dream, in a country where a person is judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin.
By the content of that character, I have a dream.
But you can't go in society and indict a whole society of people, a whole race of people, because one person did something. Don't indict a whole society of people because what one person does to somebody.
And Ron told me he really enjoyed this march on Saturday. There was no sadness in his heart, and now a lot of people are looking forward to another great march here at the Lincoln Memorial tomorrow. But organizers say this is more than just a commemoration of the March on Washington. This will also be a call to action. Reporting live in Washington, D.C., Kumasi Aaron, Channel 4, the local station.
So Kumasi, in addition to hearing from the president tomorrow, what else can we expect?
Well, in addition to President Obama, there will also be former President Bill Clinton speaking here and former President Jimmy Carter. There are also going to be a host of speakers similar to the march that we saw on Saturday. So a lot of diverse speakers speaking out here at the Lincoln Memorial. And a lot of people are just very excited about hearing from people, hearing from the president, especially here at the same place where Dr. King delivered his iconic speech, Mary. Mary, it's been truly amazing. It almost feels like you are a part of history. When I was standing there looking at the Lincoln Memorial, I kept thinking about all the videos that I've seen of the 1963 march and thinking about the hundreds of thousands of people that gathered there 50 years ago, the sense of urgency they felt fighting for justice and for freedom. And today's march was just as dynamic, hearing from so many dynamic speakers like President Obama and Bill Clinton there. It was just really exciting, and it wasn't just people commemorating the speech, but saying, hey, there's much more to be done. We still have a long way to go. So it's just really a great experience for me. And I also spoke with a man who is from Green Cove Springs who shared the same sentiment.
Growing up in the Clay County school system, I must say that it really has been great because we got a good perspective on all aspects of American history.
Today, Bruce Butler helped write a new chapter of history he learned growing up in Green Cove Springs. He now lives in Virginia and decided to drive to the nation's capital and celebrate the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington.
Events like this, if I'm nearby, I'm going to try to come and try to make it because it's worth it. In the end, it's worth it because you can look back and say, I was there.
There to see President Barack Obama talk about freedom, justice, and jobs in the same place where Dr. King did 50 years ago. In his speech, President Obama talked about the other things that were not a reality in 1963, specifically equal rights for African Americans. The president told the crowd change doesn't come from Washington, it comes to Washington. It's that spirit of change, Butler says, will stay with him long after this historic event. And so one thing I will say about the crowd here, it was just very diverse. I really like that about it. It was people not just about race when we're talking about diversity, but just ages. You had people in the crowd talking about, I remember where I was right here in 1963. Then you had other people who weren't even born in 1963, people bringing their grandchildren out just to be a part of history. So just a really great event, and it was good to see everyone just kind of coming together to celebrate the dream of Dr. King. Reporting live in Washington, D.C., Kumasi on Channel 4, the local station.
Kumasi, what about you personally, though, after seeing the celebration firsthand? What do you believe was the biggest takeaway from it all?
I think what they really wanted to stress is that Dr. King's dream has not been fully fulfilled, and it's up to the people who were in the crowd to make sure that it is. So it was more than just a celebration of what he said in 1963, the goals he set in 1963. It was really a call to action for everyone here gathered in Washington, D.C. to take what they're hearing, take what they want to change, the change they want to see, and take it back to their communities and, you know, really fulfill Dr. King's legacy by working in their communities to better not only their communities, but the entire country. So that was really the biggest takeaway. It just wasn't, hey, let's celebrate Dr. King. This was about really making his dream come true, Mary. Well, Stacey, I spoke with Robbie Stokes. He grew up in Florida, went to Florida State, and after graduating from there, he took a job in D.C., but then decided to quit and start his own nonprofit. So now he sees the work that he's doing as a part of Dr. King's dream. So you can just imagine how exciting it was for him to be here today.
Sentimental for me because I'm such a vivid Martin Luther King fan.
Robbie Stokes Jr. is talking about this, the march to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. He had a pretty good seat, taking this picture of President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama, former Presidents Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter.
So to be a part of this historic event, and no other time in history will you be able to look back from the Lincoln Steps and see a drove of people all coming together for commonality.
Bringing people together has become Stokes' life mission through his nonprofit I Talk to Strangers, which strives to bring the world together one conversation at a time. It's work he believes is just one way the next generation is carrying the torch.
One of the charges that I heard from a lot of the speakers is this generation's movements that are blossoming, you know, from the Dream Defenders, you know, to my movement, to others who are spawning and taking Dr. King's dream and actually preaching it and practicing it.
Stokes says he's glad the march today was about more than just reflection on the past, but also preparation for things to come.
It just rejuvenates me. It just keeps me grounded and keeps me focused on what the ultimate goal is, which is bringing people together. Just like he did 50 years ago, we're continuing that path, and I'm glad to say that I'm continuing the dream as much as I can.
And one thing I have to say I really liked about the rally today is you had people from the generation that was here for the original rally in 1963 fighting for equal rights. And then you had people who were not even born when this rally was going on, people who learned about it in history books. But everyone seemed to be working together, and there was just one solitary focus, making sure that Dr. King's dream would be fulfilled. Reporting live in Washington, D.C., Kumasi on Channel 4, the local station. You know, Jacksonville definitely represented here in Washington, and they told me they were just glad to be here, to be a part of history. It was just such an amazing event. You grow up looking at these videos from 1963, and to actually be here celebrating 50 years, to see President Obama in the same spot as Dr. King was just really amazing. And most everyone I spoke to, especially the people from Jacksonville, were just glad to be a part of it. They were excited about hearing the speakers honor Dr. King's speech, but more importantly, they were called and challenged to keep Dr. King's dream alive.
Well, my journey started about a week ago.
Corey Wilborn has been here in the nation's capital for the past week, but he says this was the highlight, standing in the National Mall where so many stood and fought for freedom 50 years ago.
It's amazing. There's a lot of energy in here. I've loved to see the diversity of the people that are here, white people, black people, Asians, Hispanic, all of us together.
Wilborn and his group PICO, People and Communities Organizing, had a 2-day in-service here around freedom and jobs and gun violence issues he says are very prevalent in Florida right now. And work, he says, is tied to Dr. King's dream.
Well, I think that the I Have a Dream speech has still not been realized. So I think that we're doing the work to try to make his dream and our dream a reality now.
And while the work is not done, Wilborn says he's proud of the progress that has been made, including the country's first black president speaking here today.
Oh, it's amazing, and I hope that his speech is a speech that is going to fill us with the urgency of now and to help us get over some of the hurdles that, especially in Florida, that we're still seeing.
Hearing President Obama speak while standing in the shadow of history. All moments, Wilborn says, will inspire him to keep fighting for the dream in Jacksonville.
Oh, I'm hoping to take back the energy and the excitement so that we can organize and make a better nation for all of us.
Now, a lot of people that I spoke with after this event told us that the highlight was definitely President Obama speaking before this crowd. And one of the lines that got the most reaction from the people here is that change doesn't come from Washington, change comes to Washington. But just a very interactive, involved crowd, just enjoying being here for this momentous occasion and seeing President Obama here. It was really just a fantastic day. Reporting live, Kumasi on Channel 4, the local station.
And Kumasi, what an opportunity today for people watching. Tell us about the crowd, what you saw.
Well, you know, we got here, we were here at 8 o'clock this morning. The gates opened at 9, and we thought we were going to be early, but there were so many people trying to get into this event. It took us about an hour to get through security. There were so many people who really wanted to be a part of it, even though it was raining. There was, I think from the newscast I watched this morning, 60 to 70% chances of rain here, but that didn't stop a lot of people from coming out, getting umbrellas, bringing ponchos, and just staying here. Even when it rained, they didn't leave. There were people still trying to come in despite the rain. I know there was another rally on Saturday, and to me it looks like the crowds for Wednesday were comparable to the ones on Saturday, so it's really great turnout, a really great day here on the nation's capital, Tom. A. Philip Randolph grew up on Jacksonville's east side, and not only was he the first person to speak at the March on Washington in 1963, but he's the man credited with making the entire march happen. Today, you can tell just how important and respected he is.
As the late A. Philip Randolph said, the organizer of the march in 1963,
Dr. King and A. Philip Randolph, John Lewis and Bayard Rustin, Dorothy Height, Merle Evers, Daisy Bates, and all the others who led this massive march knew what they were doing on this hallowed ground.
His name kept coming up today. A. Philip Randolph, the Jacksonville native often overlooked but credited with making 1963's March on Washington happen. Solly Mitchell and Randolph were family friends, and they worked together in Jacksonville's Porter Union.
I was his secretary of treasury for the local here 6 years. He was a dynamic organizer and negotiator.
Randolph left Jacksonville at age 22, but his work for equality was just beginning.
Randolph was a person, tall, erect, with a deep baritone voice that projected quiet dignity. A person who was never critical of anyone.
Norman Hill was a staff coordinator for the 1963 March on Washington. He says it was Randolph who brought 6 civil rights leaders together for a meeting with President Kennedy to make it happen. Do you think this march would have been possible without him bringing everyone together?
No, I don't think so. I think he was the key, the catalyst, the central galvanizing figure.
Now, as thousands commemorate the March on Washington, the A. Philip Randolph Institute is determined to make sure Randolph's work is never forgotten.
Sometimes history gets a little bit twisted as it moves along, so every year we make sure that we do a national conference to commemorate the legacy that we've inherited.
The march in 1963 wasn't the first one that Randolph organized. He actually organized one in 1941, but that one was called off because President Roosevelt issued an executive order banning discrimination in the defense and government industry. In Washington, D.C., Kumasi on Channel 4, the local station.